Update. My family wants me to join them for Christmas after disowning me over 8 years ago. Need advice on whether to go or not to go? Original post. After being disowned 8 years ago, my family has invited me, my wife, 27 female, and daughter 1 female for Christmas. After getting conflicted advice from my friends, one of my buddies told me to post my dilemma here to see what random internet strangers would say. I, 25 male, am the youngest of 4 kids between my mom, 52 female, and dad, 54 male. My siblings are, fake names, Michael, 31 male, Sarah, 28 female, and my twin brother Carl, 25 male. For context, growing up, I was the black sheep of the family, and I knew that from a very young age. You see, my family's full of athletes. My dad was a star basketball player for a D2 school. My mom played volleyball. Michael played soccer. Sarah played softball. And Carl was the star running back for the football team. I was never really interested in any of those physical sports, but rather I was interested in archery, which my family called a wimpy sport. My parents were always invested in my siblings, and rarely ever attended my events to the point where I basically had to beg for them to come to my tournaments. Between the ages of 14 to 16, I had taken part in about 20 tournaments, while my parents only showed up to 1. I was never neglected by them, but they were never emotionally there for me as they were for my siblings, and as a teenager, I resented that. Whenever I tried to bring this up to them, they would always call me an attention seeker. But however, this is not why I was disowned by my family. When I was 15, I began dating Amy, now 25 female, who was in the same grade as me at that time. After about 6 to 7 months of dating, I introduced her to my folks and my siblings, and they really liked her. I know I was young, but I could see myself having a future with her. Almost 2 years later, one of Amy's ex-friends told me that she had been cheating on me for a couple of months. At the time, I didn't know who the guy was, but after confronting her, she told me that it was my twin brother. She basically told me that while at first she loved me, the love she had for my brother surpasses that. Later that day, when I confronted Carl at home, I was so enraged that I sucker punched him and knocked him out. I admit that I should have not gotten violent, but years of resentment towards him and the rest of the family just burst open. In exchange for my family not pressing charges on me as I could have been tried as an adult in court, I was sent to live with my paternal aunt, 48 female, who at this point was estranged from the family and lived in another city about 2 hours away. From then on, I have not had any contact with them. At first, it was tough, but later on, with support from my aunt and her husband, 48 male, I moved on from wanting a relationship with them. I transferred to a different high school and attended a university in my aunt's city and graduated as an electrical engineer. I later met my wife and got married to her. I, at the time of my wedding, thought about inviting them, but went against it because I did not want any sort of drama at my wedding. From that point, me and my wife bought a house an hour away from my aunt and were blessed with a daughter a year ago. About a week ago, I received a Facebook message from my mother and father wanting to reconnect over Christmas at their house. I told them that I would consider it as I possibly have other plans, but would give them a clear answer soon. Later on, both Michael and Sarah sent me friend requests, which felt weird to me. My wife has told me that if I decided to go, she and my daughter would spend Christmas at my father-in-law's house, as she does not have to deal with unwanted stress as she is 2 months pregnant, and I agree with her. My question to those reading this is that, should I go and try to reconcile with my family or should I not? I am very conflicted in what to do. On one hand, they perhaps feel bad about what they did to me and want to apologize for what they did. But on the other hand, perhaps if I go there, they will try to make me apologize to Carl, which I do not want to. Any advice would be helpful. Now for the top advice before reading the update. I think you should go another time. Spend Christmas with your wife and child. Visit your family at a less stressful time to see if they have any ulterior motives. It might just be about them wanting to see their grandchildren and not so much about you, which would be hurtful to you. Yeah, I agree. Go another time. I was thinking the same thing. It could be something related to the grandkids. Spend Christmas with your wife and child. Christmas is too big of an event to meet them. Also, update us. I can't get this post out of my head. I can't imagine a parent kicking out their child who was betrayed by their other child. They might want to reconnect due to money, grandchild, I don't know. But it's weird that even his siblings texted Opie. I hope it's for good reasons though. I honestly wouldn't spend Christmas away from my pregnant wife for them. Maybe I'm missing something, but why Christmas? They could have reached out at any time and given you a chance to pick a convenient time as they're the ones trying to amend things. I don't know. It seems weird to me. I personally wouldn't go unless you desperately want them back in your life. Optics. They found out Opie has a kid and is successful, and now they're trying to heal the family so they don't look like trash who abandoned their son years ago. It's a trap. Notice they didn't open with any remorse or any sign of an apology. They want something. Money, free work, an organ, access to your babies, or just to look good to their friends. I'm not saying don't go, but keep your expectations low. Be ready for the "we need you to do X for us in order to properly reconcile" speech, and have a quick exit prepared. I don't know. As a parent, I cannot fathom going no contact with one of my children for 8 years, after my other child did something so cruel to him, so he hit him. That is just inconceivable to me. I would totally understand if my son hit his brother if he ever did something like that. Maybe wrong, and I know I'm not supposed to say that, but we're all still human. Whether you can move past the fact they abandoned you to your ends and turned their backs for 8 years is your choice. But personally, I don't know if I could. If you can't and don't want to see them again, I doubt anyone would blame you. If they do, they don't know the full story. If they do know the full story, then they're not worth of your time either. And now for the update. I wanted to post earlier, but some things got in the way. 2 days after Christmas, my wife began to experience unbearable pain in her abdomen area, and she hardly could stand on her 2 feet. Me and her sister, a 30 female, rushed her to the hospital where we found out that my wife had suffered a miscarriage, and that the fetus had to be removed right away. Honestly, the worst part of me was explaining to my wife what had happened. Due to complications surrounding the operation, my wife was forced to stay for 2 more days. Honestly, I have been trying to stay strong for my wife and my daughter, but honestly, I'm struggling right now. On to the updates of the original post. Most of you that commented on the same day I posted told me not to spend Christmas with them because of the significance of that holiday. I agree, and decided I would spend the rest of the holidays with my wife. They never made time for me, so why should I make time for them? When I texted them this, I assumed they would try to argue with me, but rather they said they respected my opinion and could not wait to see me after the holidays. I began to do some digging into my family to try to figure out why they have reached out. Michael is a corporate lawyer who works for a major company in my hometown. But looking through his Facebook page, he has 2 daughters and was married to his wife in 2016. Sarah appears to be married to a doctor. She herself 8 years ago was studying to be a nurse, and they have a son together. I have a friend who lives in my hometown and has parents who are friends with my parents. When I asked her about Sarah, she told me that Sarah had divorced her first husband, the one she was dating 8 years ago, after he had committed mail fraud. Carl got married to Amy right after high school, and they have 2 kids together. I cannot exactly figure out what he or his wife does for a living through Facebook, but judging that they bought a big house last year in the midst of a pandemic tells me they're not really struggling. My dad seems to be going through a midlife crisis, and my mother is really into the wellness community. And then began to list the reasons of why they wanted to possibly reach out to me now. 1. Money. Unlikely because 8 years ago, my parents' combined salary was higher than my wife and my salary. And given that my siblings are not struggling financially makes me think money's not the reason. 2. Organ donation. Could be the case but seems unlikely, but a commenter said that it could be that Carl, given he is my twin, would be my most likely match, and I think it's unlikely because he was tagged in a Facebook post skiing just a week before Christmas. 3. Regarding my daughter. They could possibly be reaching out to me to have a relation to my daughter, but I honestly am not sure. My daughter is not the first granddaughter for my parents, so I do not know why they want to meet her. They most likely found out my daughter existed because my wife's Facebook account was public. She has since privated her account. I then contacted my aunt, the estranged one who took me in, informing her about the situation, and she explained to me why they were reaching out to me after all this time. To understand this situation, you need to understand why my aunt was estranged. My paternal grandpa, 79 male, and grandma, 76 female, had 4 children. My dad was the second oldest and my aunt was the third. My aunt after college came out to her parents as bisexual and began dating her girlfriend. My grandparents immediately disowned her and refused to have any contact with her. However, about 4 years ago, my grandpa began to reach out. About a month ago, my grandpa had been asking about me and what I was doing in life, and whether I was married or had kids. My aunt responded by calling my grandpa out for wanting to know about me after he supported Carl for what he did. That is when the whole situation changes. My grandpa told my aunt that it's because I had cheated on Amy with one of her close friends, so I deserve to be estranged. My grandpa's a religious nut, so he looks down on cheating. He had been told by my family that after the friend who I allegedly cheated with confessed to Amy, she went to Carl and Sarah for support and comfort. And when I found out about this, I confronted and brutally attacked Carl and Sarah. While Sarah was the one who tried to break me and Carl apart, I did not lay a finger on her, and I did not do that to Carl. When my aunt was telling me this, my jaw dropped. I could not believe that they hated me so much that they were willing to make up a terrible lie about me and spread it around. My aunt later told Grandpa the full truth and what truly happened, and my aunt told me he was shocked because he always thought Carl was a good kid. My grandpa then asked my aunt for my number, which she declined to give. I figured out why my parents and siblings wanted to get in touch with me. It turns out my grandpa had told my parents and my siblings that if they did not apologize for what they did to me and have me over for the family Christmas dinner, they would be cut off from his will. For context, he is a multi-millionaire. So that is why they reached out to me. Not to apologize about how they all wronged me in the past, but rather because if they did not, they would not get anything from Grandpa. What a bunch of greedy people. After hearing about this from my aunt, I decided to block all of them. Why should I respond to them? At this point, all of them are dead to me. I have a wife to support after what she went through, and a family that respects me and my in-laws. However, this does not end here, as 3 days after New Year's Eve, I received a call from an unknown number on my work phone. I'm used to getting calls from unknown numbers because of my career, but when I picked up, I heard my grandfather's voice. He most likely got my number from my company website. The first thing he did was apologize for not trying to get in contact with me for the past 8 years. He told me he was sorry that he could not be there for important events such as my graduation, a wedding, and the birth of my daughter. I was not really close to him before, so him cutting me off did not bother me. Later in the call, he told me he was so disgusted with the rest of my family that he is cutting them off his will and adding me to it. I honestly do not know how to feel about that, as the money would be helpful, but at the same time, I do not want him to use this as a way to force a relationship between me and my daughter. We talked for about half an hour. The way the call went made me think that perhaps I could build a good relationship with my grandpa, but then he told me something that got me really pissed. He told me that he was disappointed and that my daughter had not taken the family name. For context, after I got married to my wife, the issue of what last name to use as a couple came up. For some legal reasons, I was unable to change my last name to my wife's last name, but we decided as a couple that all of our future children would have her last name. I at this point unloaded on my grandpa, calling him a senile old man and many other hurtful things, and told him to never contact me ever again. The audacity of this man to say that after what I went through is something. I will not let him use the money I received in the will to control me. Even if I receive the money, I will donate it to a local charity, but he is a man of false promises, so this is unlikely. These past few weeks have been really tough for me and I hope to make it to the other side. My wife has privated her Facebook account and my in-laws have done the same. What they do to try to contact me is beyond me. Hell, they would probably hire a private detective to try to find me. I believe they do not know where I live, but you never know. I have thought to get a restraining order, but given that there are lawyers within the family means getting a restraining order will be hard. I did not really get any time to answer any questions given in my last post before it was deleted for some reason. I will do my best to answer any questions for the next day or two, but after this, I'm done using the site for a while. Thank you for all your advice and I wish you all the best in this new year. I'm so sorry for your loss, Opie. I can't begin to imagine the pain you and your wife must be experiencing right now. Your family is just absolutely chock full of some of the worst a-holes I've ever heard of, and the effing audacity of them is unmatched. They do not deserve any more of your energy. Screw them all. I really hope they don't pursue you anymore and you can focus on your family at home. Thank you for taking the time to update us, and I will hold your family in the light. Thank you. Sorry for your loss. I hope your wife gets well soon. Your family's having a difficult few weeks. Don't let those people get you. I have to say, besides Grandpa's awful comments about the last name, at least the truth is out to make those people look bad. Grandpa can keep the money. If it comes your way before you do something, think about it when you are calm. You chose good people to be family. Your wife, daughter, in-laws, and aunt. They're all that matter. The others can go to hell. I'm sorry for what you've been through, and for the loss of your child. Remember, you have support and a family that loves you. You are wanted and loved by them. Even if your parents and siblings aren't those people, you are not alone. Seek professional support and help for yourself and your wife. It's a lot you've gone through. Unfortunately, due to the new variant, it has been delayed. Offloading on your granddad might have convinced him that your aunt was full of crap and to give your family their inheritance, especially since they tried to convince him that you're some barely contained psycho and you offloaded at the first disagreement with him. You were well within your rights to be offended, but you just cut off your nose to spite your face there. The guy must be old. He's going to have old-fashioned values. Did you try explaining that it's something that's done in society nowadays, or did you see red immediately? To be honest, you've had a really rough time of things, and I imagine that must have been the straw that broke the camel's back, right? I just figured you might want a fresh perspective. Much love to you, man. I really hope your missus gets better quickly and your 2022 improves quickly. To be honest, right now I do not care how he sees me. I do not want to have a relationship with him on a basis on money. This may ruin the relationship my aunt and grandpa have, but to begin with, they never really had a relationship.
Am I the a-hole for boarding the plane and leaving without my wife? Plus updates. Original post. My wife, 43 female, and I, 47 male, have a daughter, 21 female, who goes to college out of state. We'll call my wife Meg and my daughter Jess. Jess is in her junior year of college. Over the summer, she was employed by her university and was able to stay in the dorms. After a summer, she was moving out of the dorms and into her own apartment off campus. Meg and I live in the Pacific Northwest. Jess goes to school on the East Coast. We usually go to visit Jess a couple of times throughout the semester, typically parents' weekend and move-out day. She also comes home during the holidays. Let me start by saying that traveling with my wife is not a great experience. I am very type A. I like to have everything organized and make sure that we get where we need to be early, especially when traveling. My wife is the opposite. Very go with the flow, and we'll get there when we get there. I do my best to meet in the middle, but not when traveling by plane. Last year, during Parents' Weekend, Meg and I were going to fly out to see Jess. Our flight was at 10 a.m. Our airport isn't huge, but it's not tiny either. I told my wife that we needed to be at the airport 90 minutes early, and we live about 30 minutes from the airport. This being said, I wanted to leave at the very latest by 8, since we would also need to park and walk a little bit. Of course, I got up at 6 to make sure everything was ready and accounted for. My wife does not like to get up early. It took me attempting to wake her up 5 times before she eventually got up at 7:40, then wanted to make coffee, shower, and eat a bowl of cereal. Let's just say that we didn't leave the house until 9. It ended up being busier at the airport than normal, likely due to many colleges having Parents' Weekend, and it took so long to get through the security that we missed our flight. Rightly so, the airline refused to refund our ticket. We were able to get new tickets, but not until the next day, and we missed Friday afternoon and Saturday morning with our daughter. Jess was disappointed, to say the least. Fast forward to now. We were flying down for a long weekend to help her move. We take one flight from our town to a bigger town nearby, then fly from there to my daughter's college town. Again, it was a long morning of me pushing my wife to move along. Due to the last airport mishap, I wanted to make sure I told her we needed to leave extra early so we wouldn't miss the flight again. We got there on time, with a bit of time to spare, and my wife was annoyed. She kept going on about how now we just had to sit and wait for 45 minutes for them to start boarding. We took our first flight and landed in the connecting city, at a much larger airport. We only had about a 1-hour layover. We got off the plane at 9:15, and our next plane started boarding at 9:40. We had to take multiple rails to get from where we landed to our terminal. We got to our terminal and had about 15 minutes until our plane was set to board. My wife told me that she wanted to get coffee. There was a little market next to our terminal that sold hot food and coffee. I asked if she wanted me to go grab it for her. "No, I want Starbucks," she said. Well, Starbucks was a rail ride away and a bit of a walk. I told her we couldn't do that. We didn't have enough time. She stated that we had enough time, and if I wouldn't go with her, she would go by herself. I tried to discourage her, but she was determined. She walked away, at a brisk pace for her, and said she would be back in time. 15 minutes went by, and she was nowhere to be seen. They started calling boarding groups. I called my wife, hoping she was nearby. She didn't answer. They called a few groups, then called ours. In a panic, I called my wife again, 3 times. Finally, on the last call, she answered and said she was on her way. It was a long line, and she had to wait a bit. I told her they were almost done with boarding and she needed to hurry up. I waited by the gate, but the attendant said they would need to shut the gate in 2 minutes. I waited and waited, but she didn't show up. The attendant asked if I wanted to board. Otherwise, she was closing the gate. I tried to plead with her to wait a couple more minutes, but she insisted that she couldn't. So I boarded the plane. A few minutes later, my wife called me, saying the attendant wouldn't let her on. They had already removed the boarding ramp at that point. She told me I needed to tell them to let me off the plane to be with her. And I said no. It is not fair to do this again to Jess. I said, "I told you we didn't have time, but you decided to go anyway." I told her to go purchase a new ticket for the next flight, and that I would see her when she arrived. She got to Jess's school and seemed unbothered by the whole situation. Didn't even really talk about it. I thought maybe she realized it was her fault and just wanted to drop it. Boy, was I wrong. We are now home, and she hasn't talked to me since the trip, over a week ago, and is insisting that I am the a-hole. So, am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments before reading the updates. I stopped being the caretaker for my partner after the first time we missed a flight. Told him nope, never again. The next 2 flights he missed, and man, he bitched. I explained again he's a damn adult and has choices to make. The 3rd time he missed a 10-day cruise. He's never been late again. He's pissed about it, but listens to me and gets up, ready, and out the door on time. Oh, and not the a-hole. Missed a 10-day cruise? Like all of it? This is hilarious, and I laughed harder because that was the 3rd instance. Not the a-hole. You need to make a line in the sand. Sit down and tell your wife that you love her and you cherish her, but the way she disrespects your desire to be punctual is just too much. Tell her that from now on, you're going to make separate arrangements when traveling. You are not responsible for waking her up. You are not responsible for getting her out the door. She's an adult and she can do what she wants. The first time she completely misses an event, I suspect things will change. But you've been accommodating her to such a high degree that she can act like an infant. Not even a desire to be punctual, a desire to not miss a flight and pay again for a whole new set of plane tickets. Not the a-hole. Your wife is very selfish. Imagine missing time with your child because you thought coffee was more important. During a move, no less. The only option is to stop coddling your wife, as apparently people have been doing all her life. Leave on the dot, every time. Eventually, she'll learn to be on time or be left behind. The world doesn't revolve around her, and it's high time for her to grow up. Now for the first update. Wow, I know a lot of people say this, but I really didn't think this would get as big as it did. Thanks everyone for the responses. I have been trying to read them in batches when I have time, because I have been getting some good suggestions. I wanted to answer a couple of questions I saw as well as add a bit of extra info. As far as how she acts in other situations, she generally doesn't have any issues. She is never one to be late to work or anything like that. It just seems like travel is her poor area. I never noticed things like this until we started traveling often to see our daughter. This is why I never considered ADD or ADHD. She really shows no other signs of this. I saw posts implying that my wife might have an addiction of some sort. I'm not sure how that would line up, but I don't see that being a possibility. I didn't think the following information was important, but my daughter made a comment, and so did a friend that I discussed this with, so I thought maybe I would mention it here. Jess is not Meg's daughter. I was married once before, and my wife unfortunately passed away due to complications during Jess's birth. I remarried Meg when my daughter was 6. My daughter made a comment that Meg doesn't want to come to see or help her, and that is why she is always running late. But I have offered to go alone, and Meg was always very against that idea, so I wouldn't think that is the case. I can't say that Meg and Jess have had the easiest relationship. Meg always wanted to have another child, but we were unable to conceive. She did make comments that she wanted children of her own, and that caused a little rift in our relationship at the time because I wanted her to see Jess as her daughter. But they really never had the typical mother-daughter relationship. It was always very much pushed that Jess was my daughter. Meg did make comments about being excited to have an empty nest, but I assumed this was just because we would have more room. Jess is a great kid and really never says anything bad about anyone, but she has made comments before stating that she thinks Meg is jealous of her, but this never made sense to me. She has also told me that she doesn't want Meg to come to her school for Parents' Weekend, as she would rather spend it just with me or wait for Father's Weekend. But Meg always says she wants to go, and I have never gone without her. This being said, I have never seen any negativity directed at Jess from Meg, or resentment. Maybe I am missing something? You're definitely missing something, sorry. Your daughter is right. Your wife is jealous of your daughter. Go without her as your daughter has requested. Your wife isn't going to see Jess because she wants to see her herself. It is so you and Jess don't spend time together without her. Sounds like your daughter hasn't wanted to rock the boat so far, but the dynamic is very, very clear. The fact that your daughter noticed should be enough reason for you. I wouldn't trust Meg with your daughter. Make sure you leave everything to your daughter in your will, because if your wife acts this crazy when it comes to your daughter, I'd never trust her not completely writing her out of the will after you pass away. Listen to your daughter. Now for the second update. Hi everyone, thanks again for all the advice. I read as many of the comments as I could and took in all the information. I wanted to provide an update. My wife finally started talking to me again. When she did, I told her that I wanted to have a conversation about the situation, but I wanted to give it a couple of days for emotions to settle down. Some of the comments here gave me a great idea, and I wanted to see what she thought about it. For all future trips, I will have my tickets, and she will have hers. I typically drive to the airport and leave my car in one of the pay lots, so I would drive myself and she could Uber. She will have all the freedom she wants to do what she wants. But it is up to her to arrive on time and board the plane. I let her know that it was starting to feel like I needed to keep track of both of us. I phrased it in a way to make it sound like I didn't want to be controlling over her and let her manage her own time. She wasn't happy with this, but she reluctantly agreed. Now to get to the bigger issue that I didn't realize we had until reading the comments of this post. Call me oblivious, but I really never thought there was any issue between Meg and Jess. After talking to my wife, she wouldn't admit to any issues and stated that she would never intentionally delay a flight so that we couldn't see our daughter, and acted offended that I would ask such a thing. If that was her actual purpose, I don't think I would be able to prove it, but it will be at the forefront of my mind in the future. After talking to Meg and Jess, we decided on the following. Meg and I will be visiting Jess on Parents' Weekend, but I will be attending Father's Weekend from now on, and I will be attending by myself to get some alone time with Jess. Jess seemed very excited, and surprisingly, Meg didn't seem to have an issue with that this time. Thanks again to everyone who took the time to read and give me advice. I really appreciate everything, and I hope these steps can work towards a resolution for the issues. Wishing you all the best, of course, but be careful. It seems, from my perspective, which is limited to the information you have given us, that your wife only tolerated your daughter and wants to keep you away from her now that she's an adult. I saw a similar post about a soon-to-be wife with a stepdaughter. The new wife was expecting for her soon-to-be husband to be a seasonal parent after the wedding. Of course, you have been married for a long time and everything seemed normal to you, but I would recommend reaching out to your daughter to ask for her perspective growing up with her stepmom. Agree. We obviously only have limited info, but I wouldn't be surprised if his wife has been counting down the days until they were free of his daughter. I've seen this before. Someone marrying a person with kids, never letting on they had no real affection for the child, patiently waiting over a decade for the kid to be a legal adult, thinking he could essentially cut his wife off on their 18th birthday. OP, I've seen this play out before. Of course, she'll never admit to not liking your daughter or to doing anything negative toward her. She'll act like she really cares for her, is worried about her, or misses her, while giving her snide comments on the side, poking at her in ways that seem like she's just concerned or giving advice or sabotaging chances for you to see her. And your daughter, as your child, will never admit it to you if she feels slighted by her, because you're happy and your wife makes you happy, and she would never want to mess that up for you, so she'll just endure. But she's slowly been letting you know. Talk to one of your daughter's best friends. Ask them what they think. Ask people who are constantly around you if they've seen any type of behavior from your wife toward your daughter. Look, I'm hoping that's not the case, but to me that's what it sounds like is going on here. Last story. Am I the a-hole for calling my boyfriend an idiot because he won't get a colonoscopy, even though his mom had colon cancer? So my boyfriend, 33 male, has a family history of colorectal cancer. His mom was diagnosed in her early 40s, and it was really bad. She survived, but it was a long, awful ordeal. He was old enough to remember it. Because of that, his doctor told him he should start colonoscopies earlier than most people. He's technically overdue for his first one, and lately, he's had some weird stomach problems. I've been telling him for a year to get it checked out. He keeps saying things like, "It's embarrassing," "I'm too young," "What if they find something bad?" Like, yes, that's the point of the test. The other night we got into it because he mentioned again that his stomach has been bothering him. I told him point blank, "You're being an idiot. Your mom went through hell with this, and you're ignoring your chance to be healthy." I also said that if he won't take care of himself, I don't know if I can plan a long-term future with him because I don't want to lose a partner to something that could have been caught early. He got really upset and accused me of being controlling and dramatic. Now he's barely speaking to me. I feel like I was harsh, but honestly, I'm scared. The news has story after story of people dying from this because they ignored it too long. People his age too. I'd rather him be mad at me than bury him in 10 years. Am I the a-hole for calling him an idiot and making this an ultimatum? Now for the comments. I also said that if he won't take care of himself, I don't know if I can plan a long-term future with him because I don't want to lose a partner to something that could have been caught early. This is what a boundary is, folks. Please take notes. Not the a-hole. You were harsh, yes, but justifiably so. It's okay to be harsh. Being harsh does not equal being mean. Sometimes we have to be cruel, blunt, and firm to be kind. He needs to understand what is on the line is more than the embarrassment of being sedated with a camera up your butt for a bit. I'm watching a friend slowly die from colon cancer. He resisted getting a colonoscopy for years, and when he finally had one, they found stage 4. I fully support your ultimatum. 100%. My dad was dead before 50 because he self-diagnosed himself with hemorrhoids and refused to go get an exam until it was too late. He was stage 4 at that point. He died a few months later. He left a widow alone to raise 2 teenagers. My grandfather had his first polyp removed in his early 40s and passed away from complications around his colon in his 80s. Those 40 years had screenings and medical appointments, but they also had his wife and daughter, his grandchildren, and a whole half of a life. I get that it's scary to think about cancer, but the mentality of ignorance is bliss is the equivalent of a 2-year-old believing they are invisible when they close their eyes. We live in an era where screening is easier than ever before, and I genuinely hope more people realize treatment is way less scary and painful than a slow, painful, preventable death. I'm sorry for your friend and those around him. It's a very hard thing to go through for everyone involved.